morning. Thank you for reading that, Damien, and thank you to those that stood. We do deeply honor your service. Sometimes we don't take the time to really think about all of the sacrifices. So I appreciate these days to remember. So, it's interesting. This talk today is opening to guidance. And I was telling Reverend Mary that I was trying to force it the way I wanted it to go. And it wasn't going that way because I thought, what a fun topic. Opening to guidance. I can just totally talk about like woo-woo things and my divination cards and, palm reading and, all these fun things about opening to guidance. But that's not where this is directed towards. It's about looking at our problems. Some of you might have a problem right now that you're dealing with. And think about that. What's your concern right now? What's going on inside of you? What's your relationship to the problem, if you think about it? When I reflect on problems, sometimes I get a little bit embarrassed because I know when my problem first rears its ugly head, I do a lot of kicking and screaming and whining. And my story is so right about my problem. And I usually try to track down some people to kind of have an audience for my problem. And then I realize, why aren't they answering their phone? Why aren't they getting back to me? Because I have a problem. And then I realize that's not the way to approach the problem. Because inside each and every one of us, we've established core patterns. And in those core patterns are ways to react to what is. But those core patterns are wrapped around the deep, authentic self, the pure self, the God self, pure consciousness. As I've taught many classes, one of the topics that gets brought up a lot is, what do we call this divine grace, this love? What is your name for it? Because often when we say God, sometimes there is a concept that's boxed around that doesn't allow the true nature of the divine to flow in and out through that. So you need to know, you need to feel your name for the one, your intimacy with the one, your connection to that divine substance. And pure consciousness seems to be such a beautiful realm of allowing ourselves to not even be able, consciousness is so vast, we can't box that in. We can't wrap something around that. And that is infused through each and every one of us. And then I can have that personal relationship. Then it means something to me, much more personal. It's at first when I was in this teaching and I heard people say, I am God. And I thought, oh, really? And I struggled with that. And I understood on one level what they were saying, but it also seemed sort of an obnoxious thing to say, because God is so ever more than just our individual personhood. So when I look at it that God is pure consciousness, and this pure consciousness dwells within us, funnels through us, and we are that, then I'm much more comfortable realizing that deep inside of each and every one of us, and myself as well, is this pure love, this pure consciousness. And when I really get that, I realize this true authentic self is living through me even though I have developed belief systems, I've had an upbringing and influences that have allowed these core patterns to develop around that, and often my problems bounce off my core patterns, and then I'm reacting. So our journey, our spiritual journey together, and Hazel, you spoke it so beautifully because it is a continual journey. And it's a continual journey when we start to build our relationships with like-minded people, where they don't allow you to really hang around in your problem very long. They'll turn you back towards spiritual principle. And when we're turned back towards spiritual truth, the deep truth, the authentic self recognizes that and vibrates with that truth and magnetizes that truth within you. And so you draw a greater understanding for your problem. The spiritual journey begins when we start longing for balance, when we start longing for a balance when life has thrown us a curve and we're thrown off. And we want to wash away those layers now of imperfection, because I guarantee when I invited you to think about your problem, there is a constriction that happens. It's a physical contraction, and if you're allowing yourself to sit with your deep self and watch that, it can be just such a split fraction of a second, but you realize my problem, and then you can feel your shoulders round, you can feel your tummy tighten, you can feel your heart contract around the problem. And yet, it really is just something that is. And we have suddenly invested a lot of power to the problem. We've given it so much attention. And it becomes our authority, and it becomes almost that which we're praying to every day, the problem to go away. And so I look at this, that's why I was thinking, where's intuition in here? Where is that moment where we have our answer? So we're looking at the moments where suddenly there's that contraction, suddenly we're out of balance with what is. We're not feeling the love. So we're not really in touch with that true authentic self that just seems to flow. We have been shielded suddenly with the ego trends that are important, but the tendencies that we've adapted when we've been faced with different life situations. So sometimes our reactiveness is really not based on a truth, but it's based on an old idea of ourselves, and so our problem tries to find resolution there. And it needs to go beyond that. All problems need to go beyond that. We learn in some way, some manner, to resist change. You know, and when we're all like kind of really cool about the time change because we got an extra hour, but I know we're going to be whining in spring when they take it back. You know, it's like that suddenly we're just not as free-spirited with that time change, but change needs to happen. It just is the nature of all that is. So we learn to resist change, and problems are encouraging us to change. They're encouraging us to wake up to something new. So in your idea of yourself, can you identify your blind spots to where you're not wanting to change? What can't you see about yourself that stems from probably a wounded part of yourself? Now, others can see your blind spots quite clearly, and they're not going to tell you unless you ask if they're kind, because you need to be willing to listen. People are trying to tell you your blind spot when they say, oh, you always. Contraction. Don't say that to me, I don't always. But that can be such a trigger, right? You always. It can point us back to something. It's pointing to one of our blind spots. You can't see yourself. What can't you see about yourself that stems from your most wounded self? This is what creates the anxiety around your problem and the confusion. So there's a study called Enneagram, and it's a personality profiling that began back in the Sufi realm of time, but it was brought to life in the 70s more apparent. And a lot of psychologists started to use that as a way to understand who we are and who others are in their 9 personality types. And we're gifted with an opportunity to learn a little bit more about Enneagram. Marilyn Miller and Charlie have done some workshops on Enneagram, but we're also having our guests, Zia and Melissa, will be presenting in December, and they're going to do a whole workshop on Enneagram, and I invite you to kind of look for that. I think it's the second week in December. But they help us to see, by recognizing our personality type, and when you're looking at your profile through an Enneagram, you'll know yourself because you'll start to squirm, especially when they start talking about your blind spots. Oh my God. You mean that's noticeable? Oh my God, I thought I was keeping that well hidden. And you can just feel this sense of, oh, I'm so exposed. Well, so be it. Every personality has an exposure to it when you look at its strengths and its weaknesses. The weaknesses are sometimes our blind spots. So look at your personality type and you realize there's an influence. These personality types that we become have an influence on our behavior. And they're letting us know how we are maneuvering through our world. But with all of this, you have a choice. No problem, here's the good news, is a trap. No problem is a trap. Every disruption in your peace of mind, see it now as an opportunity to find peace again and to meet your true self. Deepak is doing his series of meditation practices again. He started another one about empowering yourself. And he speaks of a soft power, which I found so eloquently put. This space inside of us, this pure consciousness, is a soft power. And that word soft does not mean a wimpy power that others can walk all over you. It's a soft power that is infused by love. So love pours through this soft power. And so when you start to tackle your problems from this soft power within, you're not fighting things with a hard power and a power over anything, and you're not trying to win your way, but you're allowing this soft grace, this soft, powerful grace to suddenly unravel what has been and to allow you to now begin to reframe this problem that you're so locked into. But it invites you to sit with your true deep self at the altar of the problem. So look again at what unattended pains or events have kept you a little bit blocked with whatever problem you might be facing right now. And how are you presenting to others? Where does your attention usually go, and what is triggering you in your behavior? Just watch for these signs, because when we have aligned ourselves through our spiritual practice, that's why we speak to it every time we see each other. How is your meditations going? How are your walks going? How is your knitting going? Whatever it is that allows you to go into that zone. Joey's flute playing. When he does that music in the yoga class, everybody just enters another realm, because he moves from himself into a universal self, and he plays these notes, and love just floats all the way through us, and we're all touched by it, this magic. And it's this moment of spiritual practice. It's in those moments, in those rich, awakened moments, that's when you should look at your problems. Not when you're engaged with them and the fierce voices are battling inside of you. Go deeper and recognize that there is an answer to turn within. And you're no longer looking outside for support in the way that people are going to pat you on the back. You're so right. You're so worth that problem, because it's really working your way. And you realize you don't want your problems to be other people's story any longer. You don't want to put it upon them. That's not kind. Now, if you're so stuck, the practitioner, the ministers, the friends that are your spiritual your spiritual prayer partners, go to them and say, help me find my center. Help me transcend all of this. Find my center. Find my divine way so that I can find a way back. Because I'm trying to find refuge outside myself and it's not there. It must come from deep inside our space of heart. So the inquiry begins, who am I? Who am I? As you sit with in your practice for your spiritual work, who am I? And let it reveal your strengths as well as any of negative patterns that are kind of allowing themselves to still have an anchor in your life. Because every problem, remember, is an opportunity to uproot those old patterns, to look at our consciousness in such a way that they dwell in the subconscious. And so here we have this pure, the creative process. We have the pure consciousness at the top of that beautiful V, and that's everything there. But that section in between is the subconscious. That divine must pour through that. It's going to have the influence of our past ways. So we want to make sure in the middle ground, in the soil of our soul, that we have allowed ourselves to pluck out the weeds, to deepen our understanding, to learn our lessons, to find our way. So we find the medicine here by going into the problem through the opposite of its emotion when we try to seek balance here. You're seeking peace because the problem has caused you confusion. You get in touch with this deep awareness inside of you, this deep self, through contemplation and inquiry. Go deep and don't be afraid to find your roots and not just keep rehearsing the problem over and over, staying stuck in this whirlpool of suffering. Bring it into balance. Bring it into your true nature qualities of God's strength. Look at your strength and look at your blind spots to find equanimity. So when we start escaping these old-rooted patterns of behavior, in yoga we call them samskaras, and they can be witnessed and attended to so gently. They can just be, oh, there you are. There is a root of my suffering. I feel the groove. I feel tears rising. I feel my body constricting. I feel the message, the quickening. I have something to learn here as I study the samskara of my ways. And I choose now to form a new neural pathway around what has been so that I am set free and I am setting all others free that are locked into the whirlpool of my problem. Often we approach these problems because we lack this sense of self-trust to deal with what's behind everything. And we know it's going to take great courage to follow through with the resolutions. So here we bring in the intuition, which is a really broad term, tapping into a deep knowing, a felt sense. Now, when I was with Reverend Dr. Andrea last week as my partner at the women's retreat, I said, I just keep, because she hadn't been around so I could wind her. I could take my problem to her. And so I thought, I just can't seem to get through these certain areas. I think I question my answers. I think I've come to resolution. I'm going to do this. Oh, no, maybe not. Maybe that's not the right thing. And so she said, well, let's just look at one at a time. And so she had me say with affirmation. So it was about leaving nursing once and for all. That was one of my indecisions. And because I'm just pulling on this, per diem day once a week, and sometimes it makes me have to get up early, and I'm so sick of getting up early. So I thought, well, she goes, okay, so close your eyes and say, I want to keep working as a nurse. And I said, I want to keep working as a nurse. I could feel it right away. It was instantaneous. And she goes, there's your answer. Bodies never lie. And so I felt really empowered with that moment. And I thought, I'm going to go in and tell them this Thursday when I go in. But they were so nice to me. I watched it start to bump against my number 2 Enneagram, like I'm trying to please everybody. And I thought, no, today's the day. I told Charlie I'm going to go in there and, whew, it's finally going to be over. And oh, yeah. And then I heard a bunch of other things. And then, we're just really glad you're here. And I'm like, oh, did not need to hear that. And I thought, well, I have till the end of the year. And I scooted out after serving my day. And but so it's still, I brought my problem back here to you today, and now it's on camera. So if they hear that, they're going to say, oh, I think she's going to quit. Yeah, that's a weenie way out. I'll tell them all to just tune in to the 9 o'clock service. Something's happening. But it was the point being, go back to this intuitive tapping, this felt sense. Our body and pure consciousness is so sensitive. It's so sensitive that it's quick, and you have to be awake and ready to listen, to feel, to recognize what there was just a shift. There was a knowing a moment ago. Did I listen? And then you inquire again, and you listen, and it's quick. And then you sit with it without starting. You see, what I was starting to do was starting to apply my old behaviors upon a clarity to make it easy for myself, so I stay stuck in my problem. Don't say anything, Jim. Jim goes to cardiac rehab. Your mum's the word, right? So, remembering we are preconditioned with our emotions to feel a certain way because such and such has happened in our memory banks. So we have to value that, but we also have to realize, is that blocking me? So the inquiry to access this deep intuition into pure consciousness, which is really so gently right there, so lovingly right there, so much the soft power of our true nature. It's right there, but we need to be still long enough to separate ourselves from the rational and intellectual thinking that we're so habituated into. This intuition comes from the realm of the right brain, which sees pictures and images and messages from the animals, from the butterflies, from the things that float in the air that have a message for you. But we try to tackle all that and put it in the left brain and put it into a paragraph and then articulate it and then think, there, I did it. I'm out of my problem. And it takes some time to distill and to allow that sense of equanimity to return to the realm and all things, as we see, come into manifestation when we have that great clarity and we've done our divine practices and we've allowed ourselves to allow the truth to prevail. So begin to watch yourself, your divine nature, in this fluid way, this fluid sense of you are getting your directions, you are being shifted in the moments that you call upon the divine. Every prayer has its answer. Every problem has its solution. Just flip it around, flip it around. What boundaries have you put on your problems? Now unblock them. Start to realize that everything is just flowing. There's another beautiful picture of how divine grace flows into us. When you look at the 5-pointed star and you see this downpouring of this grace that goes, and the heart center is often the symbol of this 5-pointed star, pure balance, right here in the heart. And then following, rising up from that, is our manifestation of that truth. Our pure consciousness merges with that divine consciousness, and there's an answer at the heart center of our being. It's right there, and the body picks up these cues that the rational mind just does not have anything to register it with because we're listening deeper. And we suddenly realize what feels right to me here. These are gut feelings. This is a somatic marker in the body that is surging through the viscera of the body, sending the chemicals out of knowing, sending chemicals out of courage if we're willing to deeply listen and then to act upon that grace. There's an oracle. Remember the Delphic oracle, know thyself? Paul Tillich looks at that and he declares, make thyself known and thou shalt know thyself. Plotinus says in his advice to his son, as this above all to any other man be true, and thou cannot be false to thyself. So we're asking for this transparency of self, which led me to the bizarrest book. I told you I'm a book hoarder, and I ran across this book from 1967, The Transparent Self. And I look at all the places that I underlined this book, and then I wrote at the end of I was so like smart alecky. At the end of each chapter, I wrote what I thought it said. And I'm like, what was I thinking way back then, 1967? Some of you are going, I wasn't even born. I wasn't even a thought. But you realize this idea of being a transparent self. What you look back upon, there's messages all through your libraries, all through the things that have become your totems of sacredness in your home. They're a message of support for you. And being a transparent self, that's what I want to be to you, and that's what I expect of my friends back to me, to be transparent. And what does that mean? It means tell the truth. It means be the truth. And so that thought from Paul Tillich came from just the introduction of this. To disclose means to unveil, to make manifest, or to show. This self-disclosure is an act of making yourself manifest, showing yourself so others can perceive you. So when we're free of our problems, we are walking in grace. So how are you showing up? Where do you feel safe? Hazel pointed to it. We invite you to feel safe here. We invite you to support the center in any way that you can, through your service, through your financial good, through your fellowship, friendship. It's how are you going to show up and find your sweet self? It's called a satsang, a spiritual community. Satsang itself means in the company of truth and choosing to stay on a spiritual path. Spiritualizing our gatherings, that's what we are. Our Sacred Sisters Women's Retreat was a satsang of truth-telling and honoring the sacredness of what is shared. Men's group does the same thing. They hold to an oath of what happens in the circle stays in the circle. Building a circle of trust. Building a circle of trust here is what we do. And when we can trust ourselves, when we can trust our intuition, when we can trust those moments, even if we flounder a little bit and feel like, well, that wasn't quite very skillful what I just did, but I was trying to follow that gut thing she was talking about. You might make a mistake, but it's just another way to polish for you to see something deeper. Everything is an invitation. When you're snagged by a problem, when it's sticky, look deeply into it. It's a sacred gift. It's an opportunity for you to find your true self. And what else is there to live for but to connect with that divine seed? So let's join together in a prayer that supports that truth. So we release problems right now. We disengage. And you can feel it. If you plant yourself intentionally into the idea of a prayer, feel that humility of allowing yourself to be in the presence of the divine, in that pure state of consciousness. We strip away preconceived ideas, preconceived notions of what it should look like, feel like, and we take a breath and we get into the cycle of the breath, and we are breathing in and we are breathing out, and we are sitting in what is, and we are present moment. And there is a beauty and a light that is transforming this moment. Can you feel it? Are you with me in that sense of beingness? I am in that space. I am a conduit now of that divine superconsciousness flowing through. It's so pure. My body allows it in with no restrictions. I am filled with grace and understanding and kindness and love and beauty and joy. Light prevails as I take my practice to the altar of my heart and I bow humbly. I look deeply into all of the characters that have allowed my life to unfold with such beauty and such power, with such support. All my ancestry, all my immediate family and friends, all my teachers, they surround me so ready to guide and to hold and to help. And I just allow, and I'm watching the body just let go of the tiny knots of resistance. And I am one. I am one with a light and a love and a clarity. I release the burden on my shoulders. I release the walls around my heart that have kept another person out because they were surrounded by my problem. And I deconstruct and I allow just a spaciousness of what is to be revealed. And I recognize what it feels like to be whole, to open. My prayer to the one, open me, open me. May love pour through me, as me. May the soft power of this divine grace speak through my word. May I recognize the power of silence as I listen and I connect intuitively to the language of the divine. And I listen and I watch and I observe and I become transparent. The divine is flowing through me. And I am flowing into the divine, and we are all one. This is sacred community. This is the spiritual journey. This is who we are. Filled with love, I release this prayer, knowing this is where we are, all together in love, and so it is. Thank you. I'll let you figure this out.